time for it to get started. Ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
All right. Hello, and welcome to the Shadow Demon Talks. Today we are going to be reviewing Digimon Adventure 01, and I am joined by Matt Howard. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
And joining us later will be Alvin LeBray. So, how recently have you watched Digimon Adventure?
It's been a while. I've had to do a little bit of brushing up.
I see.
I guess my most recent update with those kids would be going through a Digimon Try recently.
Right. So, have you watched it as an adult, or was your last experience in your childhood?
It's been off, it was consistent during my childhood, and off and on I'll eventually catch an episode or two.
Right. So, what was it about Adventure 1 that got you into Digimon?
I would definitely have to say the storylines were a lot more. It seemed a lot more in depth and a lot more enticing to pay attention to.
Right, than other shows at the time. So today I'd first like to start by discussing the children and their crests. So a lot of people say that the crests are what the chosen children portrayed the most, but I don't actually think that's the case. My theory on the crest and the digital world is that when it needs saving, it not only chooses children that will get the job done, but also children that need help in their own sense, and that the crests are actually things that each child displays, but in a very broken aspect.
Did you say that last part one more time?
That the crests are something that each child displays, but in a very broken aspect.
Okay.
Yep. So, for instance, with Ty, a lot of people watching the show on a very surface level will say that he is extremely courageous, that he always jumps into the fray and jumps into danger. But there's definitely, it definitely seems like it's alluded to at times that he's only so courageous in a very foolhardy sense, that he's only courageous when he doesn't necessarily understand the dangers.
I would say perhaps at first, but do you recall when we were first introduced to Skull Greymon?
Yes.
And how he essentially forced the situation, and it almost corrupted that sense, and then of course corrupted Greymon into becoming Skull Greymon.
Right.
I think after that moment, at least the way I perceived it anyways, he gained a better understanding of I guess how to exercise courage. And you also have to keep in mind, these were still 9 to 10-year-old kids at the time, so their idea of courage might seem a bit silly to us now, but like when we were 9 or 10 year olds, sometimes it was just, just tackle it head on and hope for the best.
Right, of course. Um, but actually, like, for instance, with Skull Greymon, so I feel like Ty has a very strong moral compass and view of how the world should work, how it should be, and that allows him to generally do things quite easily that others would have trouble with. For instance, he can own up to his mistakes and apologize quite easily, such as when the Skull Greymon incident happened, immediately following, he apologized, realized that it was all his fault and that he was acting like a jerk and that he wouldn't do it again. However, it very much seems like the main lesson that he had to learn throughout the series is how to cope with his worldviews being changed or shattered. So, for instance, what led to the Skull Greymon incident was him believing, because he got the crest first, that it was entirely up to him to protect everyone. And so he shoved food down Agumon's throat and put himself in danger to force the evolution. But when things didn't go as he planned and Skull Greymon happened, he ended up becoming terrified of Agumon evolving after that.
Right.
Until the Piximon episode, where Piximon kind of showed him some life lessons that allowed him to overcome his fears again.
And I think that's an important life lesson for us to take away from that. Like, there's like a right, because like what I got from that situation was or at least what you just explained was, we saw Ty like essentially starting to grow up and understand, like, or at least gain a deeper understanding of like right and wrong.
Right. And I think when this really all culminated, even though he does have more learning to do later in the series, is after the Edamon arc is when everyone really starts having their crest awakening arc, which really is the point where they all start learning these life lessons. However, it really seemed like the entire Edamon arc was Ty's awakening arc. And when Sora got kidnapped by Datamon, Izzy told everyone that they were just a bunch of zeros and ones, and this gave Ty like a sense of invincibility, so he was putting himself in a ton of danger without worry. But then when he realized that he could die for real if he died in the digital world, it shook him, because this worldview that he developed of being invincible was taken away from him. And
Crushed instantly.
yep, so after crumbling, he ended up realizing that the only way he could save one of his best friends was to overcome it. And that is what was capitalized on by him eventually being able to get Metal Greymon and save the day.
Right.
And then moving on from Ty, we have Matt, who... One of the things I did like about Digimon was that it felt like a lot of the Digivolutions were earned after the characters experienced a significant change or learned a life lesson. Matt seems like he got his a little randomly, but so his crest was friendship. And a lot of people who say that the crests were things that they needed point to Matt being the loner. However, I do believe that he, even as a loner, displayed a very corrupt version of friendship because it's not very overt, but Matt seems extremely overly empathetic. That he's pays attention to how everybody reacts to him and wants to maintain both his persona, his image at all times. And I honestly think this started back when his parents divorced because that put a lot of pressure on him, both in the sense that he had to take care of his dad as he was shown like cooking and stuff for him, and he also really wanted to be the cool big brother for TK to admire.
Right.
Um, However, that obviously alone wasn't enough for him to make friends, and he had a lot of learning to do. And this is especially true from Ty, where I think a lot of the characters needed to pick up certain aspects of the others, and Matt definitely needed to be able to put his pride away and put his image away to truly get along with others, to just stop worrying about what others viewed him as, and in fact, trying to befriend them.
Again, like I think that's the real neat thing about Digimon is that they took various like real world situations and were able to portray it in a way to really get people to think about the situation. Because again, like as you mentioned, that Matt's parents divorced. So, and again, he's 9, 10, perhaps at this time. Well, he was younger than that, but like going throughout this story, he was about that age. And so, when it comes to like meeting new people, and like, of course, there's going to be like a weird phase of like, is this person cool? Is this going to be someone like I can, trust? Like, I suspect like they were attempting to portray like the issues that Matt had to go through in order to embody friendship, because like it's easy to say you're friends with someone, but then like when you see like in Matt's case how like he went to battle with these people, he got to know them, like he took the extra steps to really develop like a real friendship with, of course, the rest of the adventure kids.
Right. And it looks like Alvin might be ready to join us.
Yeah, hey, I it took so long. I just got back.
Perfectly fine. So we were just discussing my theory that all of the chosen children have broken interactions with their crests at first that they need to overcome to truly embody them, such as Ty being very foolhardy and portraying courage, but as it goes on, he's truly able to cope with the world around him. And Matt being very empathetic at first and worried about his image, so he's able to understand everybody, but only until later on he's able to truly take that step to being everyone's friend.
Okay, I definitely see what you mean. especially when you like look at someone like Sora, who had the Quest of Love, and for her, like the big issue with her was like her issue with her mom and how
Right.
she wasn't really sure about. I feel like the love for her was just really weird, and she didn't know exactly like how to express it or really how to receive it. And I think we kind of saw that go like over the series, like as she kind of got more acclimated with the team, because she was always the one that was the most like on the side, or just like wasn't really looking to be a huge part of the group. And that may stem from like the issues with like love that like comes from home. So I could definitely see what you mean, like in terms of that.
Right. So actually, speaking of Sora, uh, I viewed her broken interaction with her crest as sort of, instead of love, it was devotion or caring. It was very like one way, because while she was on the sidelines the entire time, like throughout the entire crest arc, she was kind of the MVP who didn't want to like talk to anybody or be seen, but she told Agumon that Devamon was trying to feed them mushrooms, and she like talked to Mimi when she was being a brat and told her to get over her problems. She was like helping everybody from the sidelines, but she was scared to be helped herself. And this is somewhat portrayed throughout the entire series, and it's only overcome when Myotismon attacks them, and Bergermon like risks her life to defend Sora, and Sora is really able to somewhat cope with someone else devoting themselves to her.
Yeah.
Definitely agree.
Um, and then we have one of the most disliked characters in Digimon Adventure, even though I think she's probably one of the most well written, is Mimi.
I knew you were going there.
So, what do you guys think of Mimi?
So I felt like when I was younger. So just to preface this, like I'm 23, so like I was watching Digimon like when I was like a kid, and for me, I just really did not like Mimi because Mimi just very airheaded, very just I felt like wasn't really there because I don't know. I didn't feel as though she was really there to accomplish like a mission like everyone else was. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm here. And something that I don't like that they do with like female characters specifically, like with Mimi, and someone like Zoe from Frontier, is how they kind of like they try to use like beauty or like some kind of essence of like beauty or pretty with the female characters, like with Mimi, how when she first had Palmon, I mean, I was like, oh, she's so cute. But then when she evolved to Togemon, it was like, oh my god, you're like, what is this? And it's like, oh, this isn't like, what I was really expecting. And then we get back to Lilymon and Rosemon, it's back cute. And so, oh, I'm sorry, I was about to start talking about Frontier. But yeah, I did not like Mimi in the beginning. But kind of after rewatching it, I think that Mimi a really integral role in the show, because everyone for the most part besides her was really serious and really just kind of like dead straight into the mission that they wanted to do. And I feel like Mimi kind of gave us like took us out of the fantasy a little, well, like brought us into fantasy a little bit. Just gave us like some comedy when we didn't think
Yeah.
we needed, gave us a
We
little
don't
bit more, yeah, a little bit more airiness for her. So I grew to love Mimi.
I would just add on to that. Uh, yeah, definitely as a kid, like she was definitely a tough one to like get interested in. But like reflecting back now as a 29-year-old, she was like you always knew what she was thinking. And that's something that you can appreciate, especially in this day and age. Like, like she would always be like the most direct of the bunch, and I think that played a very vital part in the team.
Right. So, and well, I don't want to talk to like the sub versus the dubs very much. I do want to just mention real quickly that a lot of people say that the dub ruined Mimi because she wasn't so like fashion focused in the sub. She was very much she was portrayed as a normal girl thrust into a very weird situation, and that's why she was always complaining, which is understandable. However, I actually think that the dub added a lot to her character between like all of the jokes that they made because right off the bat in episode 2, I was so impressed because they were at the beach and they were all figuring out what to do, and out of Mimi's bag, no one would have expected she has all of this camping gear and like a compass and stuff, a broken compass, but and I started to view Mimi as that type of person that we all know who doesn't say stuff very often, but they're always trying their best at anything they do attempt. Like, they seem airheaded most of the time, but if you put them in a challenge, they're definitely going to try to win it. And so with her broken interaction with her crest, it's not so much broken as we see it in Geckomon's castle, that she's very upfront with her feelings, but she ends up becoming selfish because of it. Which I don't think she was overly selfish throughout the season. She just complained a lot, but realistically, I do think that we often forget that it is 12-year-old children in a vast world where they're walking like all the time and eating in the wild.
Yeah.
Right.
And I actually do really enjoy Palmon's, I don't know, as you said, Togemon's stark contrast to Mimi, really showing that tough side of things.
Not to mention, I think Togemon was also kind of like also contributed towards the comedic relief.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I definitely think so.
Because I mean, for goodness sakes, it was a talking cactus with boxing gloves. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, Digimon certainly did like to present like really stark contrasts that were both comedic and at times a little unsettling.
True.
Just like very off topic, but like how Gargomon was literally just a rabbit with machine gun. So yeah, things like that is just like yeah.
Right. So speaking of comic relief and probably the second most hated character, at least for people's first time watching, Joe and Gomamon.
Oh, that
I
was
remember.
perfect pairing.
Yeah. It was. I just. It was a really good pairing. This is a very studious, stuck up. Well, not stuck up, but very focused on things that were not happening there. It was just really just kind of focused on like leaving and getting back to his normal life. When Gomamon was really just about living in the present. Like can you put this down and just like enjoy the company of you right now? And I definitely think that that helped Joe out, like to grow as a person a lot, especially
Yeah,
in tree.
because Joe was very like he was extra cautious, and Gomamon was just like, nah, you know what? If it happened, it happens, and if it doesn't happen, great.
Right. Joe even though I thought he was really well written, he was definitely perhaps one of the hardest ones for me to find a broken interaction with his crest about being like, was he overly responsible? Kind of. But I think what it really came down to was that he was simply neurotic about everything he felt responsibility for. He was too, well, not quite too responsible. You can't be too responsible, but he felt too much pressure. And part of that is because he was the oldest child. That wasn't talked about in the English version, but he was like a year older, I believe, which definitely made him feel like this entire situation was his responsibility. And that was kind of leading to almost mental breakdowns for him.
Well, I would add also is like that's another like thing that is often betrayed because like when we're the older ones amongst a group of people younger than us, like and it just I mean it might just be me, but like often like I'll just at least attempt to take the lead and like okay these are my this is my flock and I have to do what I can to protect them.
Yeah, it's definitely that kind of sense of, yeah, like I'm the oldest one here. I feel like I know, I should, and I think it's more of like the, not I know more of what's going on, but more of I should know more of what's going on. It's the kind of expectation that he had for himself, just because he was the oldest one, that he needed to take the responsibility. And if he would, I think like that was one of like the biggest like problems with Joe. Well, not like problems with his character, but just like the issues that he had was that if he could have let go of that expectation that he had for himself, that he needed to have responsibility for everything, he definitely could have had a much more fun time.
Right. And I think it actually did end up showing right away within the first few episodes. I actually think that the first few episodes might have been some of the best because when Matt and Ty were arguing about Infinity Mountain, Joe ends up waiting for them all to go to sleep to explore it himself because he's taking responsibility. And then we have like a lot of characters showing their interactions with their crest because Sora, as always, is like the first to notice something's wrong as she notices that Joe's missing, and I think her, Ty, and Matt go to rescue him. And so that leads us to what's a lot of people's favorite character. However, I feel like while he is well written as a real person, he is not a great character, which is Izzy. And there's a reason for that. I feel like Izzy, very much because he was raised very secluded and he's very socially awkward, and this comes across differently between the sub and the dub, but they both get the point across that he's not great at talking to people. He knows what he likes, he knows what he does, and he doesn't necessarily have a problem with being alone and not talking to people, so he really doesn't get a lot of screen time. Well, he does, just his character doesn't seem like it develops much through the series to me.
I'd agree. Like really, like once you establish, like once you establish your like really smart character, it seems mostly difficult to like really expand on that.
Yeah, because like with Izzy, it was literally just like he could figure out all of the like tech issues that were going on, and it was like yeah, there wasn't really much room for growth with Izzy because I felt like he was always the one who they were like, we're going to give him the answer. So instead of him kind of like growing in other like emotional ways that the other characters grew. Even when Izzy found out like he was adopted, or like when like the audience found out that his parents finally told him, it was just very like what I already it just seemed like there could have been more there. Like we could have had a little bit more character growth within Izzy, but I think it was just sacrifice for knowledge. I
Right.
think I think maybe that like he was more of a person who like he was like a knowledge seeker rather than a person who was concerned with like letting his emotions show or kind of getting emotionally attached with others because he's really only into like data and information and knowledge.
Right. Like, he does seem like a well written character, like, in the sense that he is very much a person that would exist. It's just, it feels like within the show he was used as a plot device, and I feel like even the writers struggled with him because while everyone was having these like wonderful awakening arcs with their crest, with Sora having the love arc that led to Garudamon, and Mimi having the castle and all of these, Izzy's just was. It tried to make sense. He fell down a hole in Vadamon's like space, and they said that he gave up his curiosity and stuff. But realistically, Vademon was told him that if he didn't give up his curiosity, and this like conversation went on for like 3 minutes, that he would die. He only gave it up to save his life. So it's like, was there really any character growth there?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it just seems like we need a way, just wait to kind of get this point across. So let's just do this quick thing, right? I definitely agree.
Um, and then we have TK. I feel like TK actually played a very important role within the series, and not because Angemon came out whenever they needed a dais.
Growing up, because well, I have like an older brother, so I was like watching Digimon. I felt connected to like the TK character, so he was always my favorite, and like Patamon was always my favorite Digimon. I like the whole like Angemon, like his whole evolution line was always my favorite. Um, and so like I really enjoy his character because it was frustrating like in the points of like the power that he had because TK and like Kari too, I'm sure we're gonna get there is like was see they were pretty much like the strongest ones, but it felt like they weren't able to use their power unless it was literally dire circumstances. And I just wish that we could have gotten like more of their like, Digimon champions and old forms, and even their megas in the like tree. But yeah, I really enjoyed TK's character.
Right. So, originally, when I first watched Digimon as a kid, I didn't. Well, I wouldn't say I didn't like TK, but because I was attached to like Ty and Matt and stuff, he was very much in the background to me. But this time, especially since I was watching through like a critical lens and stuff, uh, I noticed that he was very important to keeping everybody's hopes up. Crest of hope aside, because uh, he was just a child. He was 8 years old, and everyone felt like they needed to take care of him. And there were times where everyone would start feeling down, and TK would step up, and you can't be outdone by an 8 year old when you're like 12 or 13. That's just, pathetic. So he really did a good job of keeping everyone together. And going on to like his broken interaction with his crest. I know we skipped Izzy. I suppose I could talk about it, but for TK, I felt like he had a very like innocent interaction with Hope in the beginning, where everything would just work out okay. Like he had a very good view on life. However, as time went on, he gained a better understanding that there are times where stuff will go wrong, but if you do your best, then you should be able to keep the worst from happening, I guess. Because TK's crest always really showed itself when everyone was about to lose, everything was going wrong. That's when Patamon would reach the next stage or do whatever he needed to do.
Yeah, it's essentially the ace in the hole. I think my favorite moment with TK looking back has to be it would have been right after Devimon when he saw Angemon like disappear right before him. I think we all would have had like a very similar reaction, especially considering he was like six, like anywhere from like 6 to 8. Like here's this thing that we just formed a like a real friendship with, and like then just all of a sudden like it went away, and then like when Patamon came back, I felt like, and of course there was the excitement of like Patamon, you're back, yay, hurrah! I think that was the first real, like the first like character development, I guess like block for TK that really set things into motion.
Right. And then we have Kari. Kari is a very interesting character who I feel, well, in part because her aspect light is just like such a weird thing to talk about. It's hard to really say that that's an aspect of a person, but she she seems to somewhat embody like all of the crests to a certain degree. Like she seems to be able to do what needs to be done, like Tai. She seems to be very empathetic towards others, like Sora, and just she has a little bit going for her in every regard. She's very Mary Sue-ish when she's introduced, it feels like.
I can see that.
Yeah, because especially with Kari, like when she like got to the team, it seemed more of she was doing well after she got sick and everything. It felt like she was just there to be like a supporting character. Like she was there doing things for other people, but no one was really like doing things for her mainly. And I think it was just I don't know. I felt like I enjoyed Kari, but I definitely felt like it was just like a second-hand like a second character.
Right. because she was very much like I actually compare her to like the opposite of Izzy in a sense, in that while he is very knowledgeable about himself and doesn't really express much to others, she does a lot for others, but she seems to not have much of her own character.
Okay, I can see that.
Um, so with the characters talked about, now we can move on to the story and plot and world itself. Um, so first we have the File Island arc with Devimon and the Black Gears and everything. What do you guys remember and think of that arc?
Um, I would say that was a good place to start. Um, I think I would say yeah, that was definitely a good starting place. I think, as I mentioned, like how Angemon disappeared after the fight with Devimon, I thought that was, at least looking back, that I would definitely see that as like a big like risk, the first risk that the show took, and ultimately I think it paid off in the long run.
Right. So, um, I actually have like a lot of gripes about the show's writing and pacing and plot and stuff, and one of those is that it feels like the show is very segmented, as if there's like no connection between all of the arcs. And interestingly enough, I seen someone point this out, that the opening that they use for almost the entire anime only shows the File Island arc. There is no clips from any other season, and even later on. And so I think that the anime intended on only being the File Island arc, because we actually see a lot within that arc. Every character gets a good amount of character development, and I think when Devimon introduced, the arc kind of went downhill, because we've, within I believe 4 episodes, saw Leomon get turned into a bad guy and turned into a good guy back and forth like 5 times, and then we got like a few almost filler episodes before they finally fought Devimon. But the fight with Devimon himself was really cool, although it was really weird that he used the black gears on Digimon when he was able to make Leomon evil without them.
One thing that I can say is I remember reading online that they said that the show intended to end after they defeated Devimon. And that it was supposed to just like wrap up and then just go on and sell toys. But then, excuse me, it like had such big success that everything after that, they just kind of wrote in, and they said like Kari wasn't even a character like when the show started, but they like wrote her in after that happened. So I think that could be a reason why the like opening only goes up to the Philo Island arc, because I didn't even notice that. But I think that could be a reason why it like only showed that.
And I would add that we also can't forget, like, this is still a a new idea that's would be in testing. So I'm sure they didn't have like the best budget for this. So I'm sure there was like some shortcuts taken in order to like minimize any like potential loss.
Right. Actually, I will say that I was because I was watching this like critically too. I was rather impressed with their budgeting and how well they were able to do things. Aside from like obviously using Digivolutions to fill time and whatnot. They were in a convenience store at one point, and there was an explosion, and the dust was literally just a filter layer that they put over and slowly had it become clear. So they certainly tried to save money wherever possible, and I was pretty impressed with that. Although post File Island, it did become a little depressing because one thing I was like really blown away by was the digital world and like how weird and cool it was with such conflicting imagery all the time. But after File Island, it all just kind of started to reuse old scenery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so after File Island, when they just kind of started winging it, we get the Edamon arc, and a lot of people give Edamon crap. And admittedly, the 6 episodes of finding the crest and being chased by Edamon really didn't like do anything to move the story along or give the children, aside from Ty, character development. But he's the main character, so he kind of gets that treatment. But I don't think Edamon was actually a bad villain at all. He was goofy, but the show was already kind of goofy.
Well, I mean, you had a monkey that was doing an Elvis impression, so I mean, of course, that's gonna be pretty difficult to take seriously.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. The
Um,
whole
uh, and so I will say that I was extremely disappointed later in the show because when I watched it again, I forgot a lot of the story beats. And so when things wrapped up with the Edamon arc and he fell into like this pool of Datamon's wires, and Datamon was talking about how it was like stuff that shouldn't exist in the digital world, and he came out as this giant ball, I was thinking, okay, while I do have my own ideas about how Apoclymon should be made, this is clearly what's going to lead into him, and I can't be upset about it. This is pretty good. And then they just kind of like tossed that idea away. and then after that, we get the controversial episode 21, but the pretty cool episode 21 because it's directed by the person who did the pilot as well as our war game. And like watching the originals for those, I was like blown away. And episode 21 definitely had a different pacing than the rest of the anime. That's where Ty returns to the real world for an episode.
Yes. Yep.
And then we get into the Crest Awakening arc, which I mean I really like because while I think that they did a kind of poor job with storytelling, their characters were really well made and it focused on that. But this also led into probably one of the best villains just because he had, aside from the most screen time, the most development among all of the villains, the Myotismon arc and the Eighth Child and everything.
Yeah, I'm a fan of this arc because we get like an actual like backstory to not only a villain but also like a Digimon and their partner. Of course, referring to like Gatomon. It's
Right.
like with the others, I don't recall getting as in depth of a development as opposed to like Gatomon and Kari.
Right. The other Digimon were just kind of given to the children right away. Like there was no backstory for them almost, but Gatomon had a ton of backstory.
Yeah, I really enjoy this arc because I love seeing how they brought the digital world to the human world. Because in watching like the first part of the first season, I was like, oh, this is cool. I was kind of more like, oh, what will happen if like this will happen in the real world? And then for them to kind of have that and to have like the real world consequences at stake, and that they're really putting the fate of the real world at this point in the hands of these 7 kids, and like no one knows really what's going on. And I just thought that the stakes were a lot higher, so that it led to some like really good decision making and a lot of really good character growth and like development. So I really enjoyed this arc.
Right. So at first, I actually didn't like the Eighth Child arc where they invaded the real world. And this is because, like, the first few episodes were almost just filler. Like, it was all about the children getting back to their parents and whatnot. And there was very little like character development or anything even going on with the story. It was mostly like comedy and stuff. But once they found out that Kari was the eighth child, the rock, like the snowball began to build really quickly, and the arc was actually really good. I do just, I guess, I would have preferred if instead of those first few episodes of just showing off the interaction of Digimon in the real world, they instead focused on all of like the good parts. Like they showed mini arcs being developed between the children and the parents, but it felt like a lot of them didn't really reach their conclusion. Uh, Obviously, we have Izzy and him being adopted, but that one that one came and went really quickly because Izzy already knew he was adopted, but at least he loves his parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Ty didn't have much to do with his parents, but Matt, we got to see Matt and TK's parents and their interactions, which I don't think that there's like a arc to conclude there so much as just building and understanding around the characters, so that was fine. Same with Mimi. I found her parents very interesting and telling as to how she turned out, how she did. Um, the only the only arc that I really wish we saw more of was Sora with her mom. There was never
Oh yeah.
there was never like a conclusion there. The most we got was her mom telling Biomon that she loves Sora.
Yeah, it definitely could have been a lot because I feel like it could have been more development between like Sora and her mom rather than her mom just kind of saying these things a little off camera. Yeah.
Right. Like, not to talk about Adventure 02, but in one episode in Adventure 02, there's a passing comment from Sora's dad that Sora and her mom now get along great, and it's just kind of like, well, I would have enjoyed seeing that arc finish and knowing this myself, but okay, it's good to know that it did go somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they tried to make up for that in like Tamers when we got to see kind of like Rika and her mom, like their kind of like story arc.
I'd agree with that.
It's definitely possible. I just started watching Tamers, and they definitely will have an easier time of things aside from being in the human world with a much smaller cast. So I do expect a lot more character development from them. Um, and then, and I suppose this is part of the reason why I'm not a fan of the original's story writing, is that it's very much a and then series. Well, this happened and then, but and then the sky tears apart and we see that the Dark Masters have taken over, and I actually do enjoy that they reinforced the rules of the digital world, though, that time passes differently, so that the Dark Masters had like tons of time to take over while the kids were in the real world.
I'd agree.
Um, go on.
Go ahead.
Uh, so, speaking of the Dark Masters, and well, I suppose before them we had Venom Myotismon. So, what did you guys think of him as a villain, and our first view of War Greymon and Metal Garurumon?
I enjoyed Myotismon. I didn't enjoy the War Greymon and Metal Garurumon, only because kind of what it evolved into, of how it was just pretty much the two of them being the main characters. But overall, I thought it was interesting because it was, you know, oh, we think that we got this guy, and then this whole prophecy comes up, and then everything's kind of in the right place at the right time. And I think it was okay. It had I think the big thing was introducing the like Metal Goromon and War Greymon. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was okay.
I think the thing with this and only having like two megas, I would definitely say looking back, this was definitely, at least I feel this was a mistake because like, and only having like Matt and Ty being able to reach the mega level, it like really lessens the value of everyone else in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. Um, I said Mallow, but I just finished up O2, but I meant Venom Myotismon, but yeah, so I think part of the reason why only Matt and Ty were able to go Mega, and I could be entirely wrong about this, although regardless, it's not good for storytelling, is I'm currently playing Digimon World, the original, and Megas weren't in the game. So I almost wonder if, because Ultimates are called perfect in Japanese, if they truly played it off as everyone had reached their final stages, but Greymon and Garurumon were able to surpass that.
I I would certainly say they picked a good dude to at least run with that idea.
Right.
Because it seemed like out of the two who definitely felt like, because you, at least to me, it felt like you could have made an argument that like Agumon and Gabumon were like best friends forever, and when it came to, I guess like, I don't know if getting stronger is the right word for it, but like they definitely showed to me that like if there'd be anyone to like break the I guess the so-called glass ceiling, like that would definitely, those two would definitely be like top of the list. That would go back to only those two reaching the mega level, then that kind of lessens the value of everyone else.
Right. In fact, that's actually like the biggest issue I have with the entirety of the Dark Masters arc, because the Dark Masters arc was actually like really well written. There was a lot of character development all around. However, the series kind of made it so that every time there was like a change in a character, like you could visibly see it because it was rewarded by this digivolution. Like the digivolving wasn't just a transformation, it was a transformation within that kind of had a reflection on the outside. But within the Dark Masters arc, that just kind of went away because everyone had reached where they were going for the series. And then we were left with War Greymon and Metal Garurumon just kind of being like the best.
I would say that's the part mostly. The only thing that comes to mind that challenges that is it was Magna Angemon that created the vortex that sent Piedmon away pretty much forever. But of course, it took like everyone else to push Piedmon into the vortex.
Right. I actually, because I saw TK as a side character growing up, like I always remembered being really offended by how like deus he was, but watching it again, Patamon isn't necessarily that deus. Like it does happen to fix situations. However, like Magna Angemon wasn't that much stronger than Piedmon, but Piedmon was already like weakened because he was losing to War Greymon and Metal Garurumon beforehand before he turned them into keychains. And then after creating the gate, like you said, everyone had to like push him into it.
Yeah, I kind of also agree on like the TK and Padma situation. I just wish that, because I wish that with his character that he would have been able to just like showcase like the Angemon evolution line a little bit more, because how we see his champion the least, and then we see his ultimate only like the least. Even or this is like into that how his mega was like supremely nerfed down, and just how Saraphon wasn't powerful nearly as he should have been. But I definitely think that if TK would have got the opportunity to have his ultimate in earlier, it would have like made a lot of other situations a lot easier.
Right. The whole Venom Myotismon thing, I was actually like, throughout most of Adventure as well as Adventure 02, Gatomon always kind of like offends me a little bit because she's stuck as a champion and they play her ultimate off as being equal to Angemon, since Magna Angemon was like reserved for the last scene. I definitely think he should have appeared for that battle with Venom Myotismon to turn the children into or to give them warp digivolution. And then after all of that, for some reason, we were given a Pokemon. Do you two kind of remember how we were given a Pokemon?
I can't remember. I think it was like once they beat Paimon, I was like, oh, there was something else after. But I don't really remember the introduction of it.
So Piedmon is taken down in episode 52, I believe. It might have been 51 out of 54 episodes. And then Genai appears. And yes, he's just like, oh, there's actually something worse going on in the digital world. Come to this point. And then, like, they go there and the entire digital world, or no, they go into like this weird space, kind of like Vetamon space, and they run into a Pokemon because that's who they were looking for, and they use an entire episode to recap the series. In fact, I'd say a Pokemon was probably there to give them a boss to recap the series, because they get like turned into digital data and they have to like remember everything they learned throughout the series to come back.
Yeah.
Overall, it was a very weird final boss. I really enjoy the concept of a Pokemon, and I think he's a good boss. Just how they introduced him, as well as like how they used him, was very weird.
Yeah, I agree. Pokemon was like fight was weird. The ending, it was just kind of weird. I think it was just kind of a means to an end at that point.
Right. And so I guess looking back through the series, how do you guys feel about Genai?
I didn't really have any like hard feelings about him. For me, Genai was just kind of like just I don't know, just like the little narrator to tell you like once you beat one thing, the next thing is coming. Or I'm gonna give you like little hints on things. But I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on.
Yeah, I'd have to say he was kind of like the narrator slash mentor to the kids. Like he would give them like just enough to where like they'd have a place to start, but they'd still have to figure it out for their own.
Right. So I actually pretty much agree completely that it felt like Genai was almost a symptom of like lazy writing, that they wanted a plot device character to move the story along. Like, okay, well, now that they beat Devamon, how do we get them to realize what's next? Here's a character to tell them about the crest. And whenever they needed to know something, he was there to magically appear and tell them about the next thing. And I feel like that's really unfortunate because I think even if they kept Genai, like there's a lot of ways that they could have had that character and had it be much more impactful. Like just uh, just a what if. Now a lot of people cried when Wizardmon died in the Eighth Child arc. It was very sad because he was like a wonderful character and whatnot, even though he didn't get much screen time. Like, what if Wizardmon was the person that was like mysteriously giving them directives to go to the next area and do the next thing?
So are you saying like instead of Gunai, it would have been Wukong instead?
Yeah, like if instead of Genai, like if Genai wasn't there because he's just a plot device, there was just like a mysterious voice, like a foreshadowing voice of Wizardmon that helped the kids out throughout the series leading up to his death, and like when he died, everyone would be able to like put the pieces together that it was him. So like you don't know it's Wizardmon, but
Eventually find out that it was.
yeah.
I could have signed on with that idea.
Like, I just think that there was a number of ways that they could have gotten what they wanted to get done just in a more inclusive manner. Because Genai is just there to move the story along.
Yeah.
And then we had Leomon, and running joke that he dies in every series and people really like him, but I'm not sure if I'm not sure if Adventure 1 is why people really like Leomon, because again, like most of his character arc was him being turned evil and then turned good, but I did think in the Dark Masters arc that he had like a really weird inclusion that was almost kind of like a smack in the face to everyone not named Ty and Matt, because he was able to warp Digivolve thanks to meeting the children to Mega. And then we got the last episode in the series. Do you guys remember watching it?
Was that the one where they essentially got on the train back to the real world as they were saying goodbye to their partners?
Yeah, it was the episode where they all had to say goodbye to their partners, where they had like a few touching words and whatnot.
I can't say I remember it like detail for detail.
Yeah, I don't really remember it.
Yeah, I suppose that there's not like a lot of important pieces to remember of it, because again, it's mostly the characters having heart-to-hearts with their Digimon, which the episode was written very well though, because it definitely like drew a lot of the relationship arcs that the characters had between themselves and the Digimon to an end, and it all concludes with like an extremely touching scene with Mimi and Palmon, because Palmon the whole time is actually too scared to say goodbye to Mimi. It's like too much for her, so she like hides the entire time while everyone else is saying goodbye, and it's not until the train is pulling away and they're like leaving the digital world that Palmon runs out and says goodbye. While I didn't think that the series was written very well for the most part, I will say that it really wrapped up really well in that last episode.
I have to agree.
Um, so are there moments or anything within the series that really stood out to you?
I think for me, it was definitely Garudamon. I don't know why, but something about that entire arc of like when they were all I forgot where they were. They were in like Myotis Mon's castle, like somewhere. Like I'm trying to find the gate to get back to the real world. And then when Bergermon was defending Rika, and then was finally able to Digimon. And I don't know, Garudamon was just a big surprise to me. Like I just didn't expect Garudamon to look like that. I didn't expect Garudamon to like be as like strong and big as Garudamon was. And it was just a really huge surprise for me. And I was just, I mean, that was a part that really just stood out for me.
I don't know. I can't recall a moment. I'd say, looking back, though, the thing that I liked the most about Adventure One was, I'd have to say, it was how the Digidestin and their partners were like a really good match for each other. Like they complemented each other pretty nicely.
Right. And did you have favorite characters within the cast?
I definitely, I like TK and Sora.
I would say, I, I would say Ty and Joe.
Interesting. What made you pick Joe?
Well, being a little more experienced, or I don't say experience, but being older, like I understand the importance of not being foolishly, foolishly charging into battle. But like Joe was the one who, like, he, while yes, he was overly cautious, just looking back, I see how important that can be, though, like taking certain precautions, and then moving out of like Adventure One into Digimon Try. Like I really appreciated who he ended out becoming, and understanding you you don't always need a reason for something to happen, and now it's time to make the most out of it.
Right. Um, he certainly probably learned the most from his partner.
I did.
Go on.
I would definitely say, looking back, Joe and Gomamon was, they definitely improved each other probably the most. And I would say Tentramon's loyalty to Izzy was probably my next favorite thing. But that would probably be more of a story for another time.
Right. Um. All right. So, wrapping up, I guess. Is there anything you'd like to say to the community watching?
I hope I inspired some thought. I know I wasn't too fresh on the story, but I was I had an opportunity to share my thoughts. So similar to Gomamon and Joe, I did my best to make the most out of it.
Yeah, I'll just say, I hope people are both, entertained and got some information out of this. And I hope, yeah, it also just inspires more conversation and just a look, like a continuous look through of this great series.
Right. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yep. All right. That'll wrap up our Adventure 01 review for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'll definitely bring on more members of the community for my 02 review. Until next time, guys, stay wholesome.